All right. Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk 133. It's Tuesday night. This is when we like to hear from you and take calls about whatever you're thinking about in college football. It's the off season, but college football never sleeps. So I'm going to go ahead and get a quick invitation to come reply and or how to kind of join us, and then we'll go ahead and get this started. So yeah, again, it's the off season, but we'd like to hear from you. You can just hit request from the Twitter app. It's in the bottom left corner, and we'll be happy to let you up here, and we can talk about whatever you'd like in college football. So again, my name is Bobak Hayeri. Let's hear. Got a couple people who want to come up already, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's get started with Jimmy, and then I'll get back up in a second. Hey, Jimmy, what's going on? And the unmute's in the bottom left. Sometimes that kind of throws folks for a loop. There you
Oh,
go.
sorry about that.
No
Yeah, no, I got
worries.
a quick question for you guys. So I'm a University of Illinois graduate, very happy with what Brett Bielema is doing. I am very, very curious as to why a lot of the preseason polls have already had Matt Rule's squad and Luke Fickell's squad hopping us in the Big Ten West. I mean, we beat those teams pretty soundly. Unproven at quarterback for both squads. I mean, I know we are too, but Altmaier looks promising. Just worried, just wondering like what gives with the lack of Big Ten respect for, a coach that's had success in the Big Ten already. Why are we already being overlooked again?
That's a good question. I mean, and I could see, especially, I know it's so funny. I know a lot of Illinois fans, and I've run into a few, especially across the last season, who got really thrilled seeing how they were doing, especially, after so many years of just kind of disappointment after, I remember when Illinois was also doing really solid in the Big Ten, gosh, I don't quite remember how long ago it was. And not just when Zook took them to the Rose Bowl. I mean, before that, when they were doing quite well. But I think, honestly, when we're looking at Illinois, and I know Bielema is a good coach, he's been there now, he's going this season, year 3. So he's still building that program up. So a school like an Ohio State, it is still loaded completely. They could have an off year and they'll still be an absolute terror when they load up because, I mean, just today, I mean,
Yeah.
one of the big stories was they got that 5-star
Yep.
recruit,
Hmm.
Milan Graham. So I think and then, time will help Illinois. If they keep producing on the field, they're certainly going to, I think, get better recognition. Most certainly. And I think right now it's a bit of patience, and I think that's always a trick. I mean, but I get what you're feeling. It definitely. I mean, but if Illinois has another couple of strong seasons, and maybe even one, people will notice. And they've got a pretty decent schedule. I mean, Kansas is actually going to be really interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
Toledo,
that'll be the big litmus test for us for sure.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Because I mean, those are two programs on the rise. Kansas is probably. I think Illinois. I would still give them the edge in that because Kansas is still. We're
Hmm.
going to be just seeing how they do. I mean, they started strong and kind of fell off a bit, kind of like Arkansas did when, of course, they played each other in the bowl. But then Penn State was going to also be a huge litmus test. That's an intense.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's an intense opener. At least it's at home. But
Yeah.
I think that's a great question. I mean, I do think though, give them time, give Illinois a little bit of time, and if Bielema keeps them going on the vector they are, they'll get more preseason respect. But right now, it's still people still. I mean, it's still kind of the Ohio State Michigan show for a lot of folks, and of course, next season we're going to also have USC and UCLA in the mix. And gosh,
100%.
well, that's gonna be interesting in and of itself. But
Yeah, I think my I guess just confusion comes from, Illinois is we're rebuilding. I guess we're in year 3 with some success last year, but then you're already getting Matt Rule at Nebraska and Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. They're in year 1, so they're behind the sticks already with us, but they're being talked about like they're leapfrogging us in year 1. I guess I fully understand why we would be behind the Michigans and the Ohio States and even Penn State, even though we beat them in 9 overtimes. That was fun.
yes,
Um,
it was.
it was great, but I guess just for
Yeah,
the Wisconsin fans and Nebraska fans, it kind of feels like disrespect for us, and maybe we feed off that and have good performances in the Big Ten West. Just very curious, at least from an Illinois fan
You
perspective.
know, and I think, and you're bringing up concerns that make sense. I mean, I think obviously with Wisconsin, I would say it's just Luke Fickell. I mean,
Yep.
there's so much talent there, and Wisconsin can recruit, and they certainly have. It's not, I think they were one of the surprise firings when that even went down. It happens, midseason, we were all kind of like, oh, whoa, Wisconsin's now in play. So I think that to an extent, it's not like they were having a huge downturn. It just suddenly they decided to change gears,
Hmm.
and we're like, okay, cool. Nebraska's fascinating only because, Nebraska's been in this kind of constant malaise, but they recruit pretty well. And I even was,
They do.
reading that they still are in the top 10 in like NIL deals and things like that. So they're able to kind of keep themselves in the picture now. And Matt Rule returning college football after what he did, turning, Baylor around after they were a smoldering crater. I think there's again a little bit of name going there, but I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Bielema is a huge name in and of itself, and if Illinois can get through this season and prove themselves again, and even if it is just taking second in the West, I think that'll help. I mean, I think at this point, maybe that's it. Maybe people are wondering, is it going to be Nebraska and Wisconsin as those that are fighting for that position? As the sacrificial lamb in the Big 12 championship game, probably the Big 10 championship game. But I'm curious. I don't think anyone would be shocked if Illinois managed to keep it going. But I think it's just that's the issue is simply that I think maybe it's been such a long lull for the
Hmm.
Illini that it's tough to get them back on the picture for a lot of folks, especially preseason. Preseason people get safe, and
Yeah.
I still, but that was Ron Turner era. That's what I'm thinking of because I do remember he had a couple of decent seasons there. I remember that, and I remember after he got terminated, I remember it did taper off. I mean, there were some
Hmm.
disastrous ones there, but I do remember when it was Kurt Kittner and all that stuff going on in the Big Ten, and when they were doing quite well under that. But
Yep, 2001 Big Ten champs, Sugar Bowl lost to LSU that year. So
yes,
yeah, yeah, we're a rare case where we have two BCS berths and a whole lot of losing around that. So hopefully, we raise the floor to I guess Iowa level. I'm sure Iowa fans might not like to hear that, but if we go 8-4 every year, I mean, considering where we've been, sign me up. Especially if we can get to Indy one time before the Los Angeles schools come over. That would make for a really fun season. So awesome,
for
man.
sure. I think in Illinois is in this situation where I think a lot of neutral fans would just be excited to watch that kind of happen, only because they have been so out of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's some fans who wouldn't be, and I see Thack absolutely going haywire
Yeah.
on the down, the thumbs down. But he likes to have fun with that. But I mean, we'll see. But no, absolutely, man. Thanks for your input, though. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, Bielema's teams are always fun to watch, and we'll see how this goes. And I think Illinois. I think we're definitely going to get a real fun look with those back-to-back games at Kansas and hosting Penn State early on.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be ready. Hopefully we'll be ready to go. I'm excited for a fun fall in Champaign. Hopefully we get back to another bowl game and make it worthwhile.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us, Jimmy.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Thack, what's going on, man?
Hey, hey, Jimmy, no hard feelings. I'm a Missouri Tigers
I see
fan,
you're
so I gotta
unmuted,
root
but
you
I
Oh,
guys.
can't.
I can't wait for that game in a few years, man. I'll see you at the Jones Dome, wherever.
Yeah, let's do
I
it,
think it's going
man.
back to a home and home. I mean, I tell you what, I love bragging rights. That's a fun rivalry. I can't wait to get back at it with you guys.
Yep, yep. All right, yeah, man. All right, Bob. This is what I want to talk about. This is what I've been thinking about, man. How wide open is the SEC East this coming year? I'd like to start from the top down here in the SEC East. I think what a lot of people aren't talking about with Georgia here is they lost Darnell Washington, and that is absolutely huge. He's no Brock Bowers. He's not getting the receiving yards, but you're giving up an entire extra blocker that Darnell Washington was able to make Stetson Bennett look really good because he had so much time in the pocket. The two games where Georgia struggled, Missouri, Ohio State, Darnell Washington both went out of both of those games with an injury. Tennessee, you got some losses there. Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Joe Milton's obviously good at throwing oranges, but we'll see how good he is at throwing footballs this coming year. I'm really high on South Carolina. Really, really high on South Carolina. I think those last two games looked fantastic. I think that Spencer Rattler, that kid's a complete douche if you ever watch that Netflix series, but somehow he's turned likable. I'm not quite sure how that happened. Kentucky, obviously, you've lost Levis, RB1 as well there. You go down. I think Florida losing Richardson is huge, but I think Florida's poised for a little bit of a comeback here. And then you look at Missouri, who's retained some definite talent on the defensive end of the field. You've got Chris Abrams-Drain, lockdown corner, who could have been playing on Sundays this coming year, decided to come back. Ennis Rakestraw, the other lockdown corner, two of the most underrated corners in the SEC entirely. And you've got one of the most stacked wide receiver rooms, most underrated wide receiver rooms in the SEC as well, with Oklahoma transfer Theo Weiss and Luther Burden. I think it's going to shape up to be a very interesting year in the East. I don't know, Bob, what are your thoughts?
I agree, and that was great to have someone come in with some real thoughts on all of that, Beck. I really appreciate it, man. Florida's the one I'm really intrigued by, only because I would like to see if they can get that going, because that's been a huge, that of all the teams. I mean, I was listening to some talk over on one of Andy Staples and Friends. I think it was one of the associated, whether or not he's even on the hot seat there, but. I'd be curious to see how they do, but I think you're right. A lot of that is going to be, who are these folks that are going to plug in and play? Like, as you said, Will Levis at Kentucky, who's going to step up for him.
I mean, even the Cleat set Florida back probably 4 years, and I'm not afraid to say that. I think there's actually validity to the fact that a cleat toss may have set their program back 3 years.
It is. It's striking how that did. That is one of those moments that at the time was hilarious, and then you're just kind of like, wow, really? There was a real kind of there was an earthquake in college football because that happened. I want to just bring up a couple of other folks that were here, and let's see here. I'm going to get to Gregory and then rating or can't wait till football season. Looks like that just changed on me. But Gregory, what's going on, man? You've been super patient.
Yeah, I'm just asking, since you're a college football guy, if you were the Rutgers athletic director, how many more years would you give Greg Schiano? Because it's already been 4 years so far, and he might not get it done.
That is, I get where that's going, because frankly, there have been cases where somebody comes back to a program and they're just tremendous when they get back. But my earliest college football memories, I didn't get really into college football until I went to college. And then I went to school. I was really into it. And my first memories were our team getting burned because I went to USC. I was there when John Robinson, who'd won a national championship in the 70s and done really well, succeeding John McKay. And then he went to the NFL, and then he came back, and it was not the same guy. Now, Schiano, I remember him building Rutgers up. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir with you, Gregory. But
yes,
I mean, so I get that. But I mean, yeah, at this point, it's not the same Rutgers as he took, back around the millennium, where it was just like, them and Temple. They were like the two guys in the Big East that were sort of like that. They were the reason the Big East never got the full respect that it would,
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the Big Ten, but my question to you though is, what would be enough for you to want to say he's done enough to earn another year and kind of get a little more of the heat off of him?
5 wins.
That's not bad. I mean, I now, of course, I say that, and looking at the schedule, they got to. I mean, oh man. So let's see. You got Northwestern, and I have no idea what to expect from Northwestern.
Yeah, it's gonna that's probably gonna be a field goal game, most likely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's weird to call that a benchmark game after Northwestern were the Irish national champs and then just didn't win again. That I still can't believe that. That was the most perfect moment when they win that game in Ireland, opened up the season. They don't win again, and yet, that was the curse of the Irish. I had no idea. I mean, somebody tell Notre Dame and Navy. I mean, someone's gonna.
That was
this August. Although
That was the only game I ever bet on. I'm not a big sports bettor, but I took Northwestern to win it all, and I took my one win, and I walked away.
Oh man, that's smart. You walked away from the game casino ahead. But yeah, no. So I mean, you got Temple that seems winnable because Temple's back to kind of being Temple again. Virginia Tech, we'll see where they're at. Last year, they certainly didn't have something going. At Michigan, well, good luck.
No, no, no,
Wagner,
no. I think Wagner would be a win, and
yeah.
then Indiana most likely.
Indiana, and then you guys have a tough schedule for 5 wins. I admit that. So 5 would be an impressive situation, but who knows? Maybe Shiano can squeeze a few more out. I mean, you don't know. I definitely remember, how surprising even getting to a bowl was for the Scarlet Knights. So I
Yeah,
mean,
and also, how much of a threat is Michigan again to get a third Big Ten title?
I think it's going to be. I mean, it's sad to say, but I think it's going to be them and Ohio State again to see which of those two is gonna get the lead edge. I mean, the momentum that they've built at Michigan right now. I think that's especially back-to-back years is what struck me. I think where
And
we want.
and do you see any of the Big Ten teams like Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan potentially going into the college football playoff again, like last year?
Oh, absolutely. I think whoever wins the Big Ten is going to be a shoo-in again. I mean, it would be unless we have just a complete fiasco of like a mini version of the 2007 season, but only with the Big Ten, where they're just for some reason you get every team's got 2 losses, and even with 2 losses, it depends who they lose to. It would be really weird to think of one of those teams not making it in. Because we are in that weird zone where the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of on the same track, where you could see those programs, the top of those 2 conferences getting 2 wins or 2 losses, pardon me, and not making it unless the winner is somebody completely unexpected, like Wisconsin or Illinois or, somebody where it's like they go in, they somehow win the whole thing, knock out the, Ohio State or Michigan in the other in the championship game and win with like 2 or 3 losses. That would be maybe a way, but it would be pretty unlikely. I would expect the Big Ten winner would be a front runner unless something really weird happens across the
Okay,
season.
thank you for your time, and I enjoy listening to anybody who talks college football on this app.
Oh man, thanks so much, Gregory. It was great hearing from you. Hey, we got one other person who's been up here really patiently. Can't wait till football season. What's going on? I think you're reigning champs when I let you up.
What do you think about the SEC West was weak last year for the first time in a while? What do you think how they're going to be this year?
Boy, the SEC. Oh man. Well, can't have a college football talk without SEC talk. I mean, it's gonna be. I mean, it's hard to, the SEC's always been, I am definitely leaning towards thinking the West is going to still have to prove itself against the East. I mean, there's so much strength in the East. Back-to-back national championships. It's hard not to give them some strength. I mean, don't get me wrong. LSU is going to be exciting. I know you're an LSU man. I remember that now as soon as I heard you. So I think Brian Kelly, what he did there in that first season, as much as, him and Lincoln Riley, 2 people that were kind of reviled for doing those coaching moves, but holy hell did they prove that they know how to coach football. So I think
I'm an Ole Miss guy.
I'm going to be curious to see how they do. Will they be able to keep that up? I think there's a lot of reasons to believe in LSU heading into this season, so I think they'll have a good shot at it. Texas A&M, I think everyone's going to be really curious to see if they can get anything going. Auburn, I think we're going to give them a year just to develop out because they got Freeze. We'll see how that works out. Arkansas, I'm not sure them or Mississippi State. They've got the mulligan year because of the tragedy with Mike Leach. We'll see how they do. Ohio State with Lane Kiffin, pardon me, not Ohio State. Sorry, that would be a hell of a thing. Ole Miss, I don't know if they'd be able to get it going. I mean, we're kind of waiting to see for Kiffin to get Ole Miss to that next level. He seems to get close and then kind of flops, but he's so fun that I kind of I got a lot of hope for him. But A&M is the one I'm really curious about. Texas A&M, I mean, I'm shocked that they can't have a year where they finally, all that money pays off. There was a post on our CFB where someone put that, which team is the oh gosh, wait, I gotta look it up. I had it kind of handy here. Yeah, it was like, who's the there was a great college football topic here. Who's the, and using British Premier League football, English Premier League football, who's the quote, it's Tottenham lads of the NCAA. And I'm just gonna give you the top of this particular post in case you're not familiar with with Premier League soccer. It's hard to pick a team that's truly as bad as the Spurs, the Tottenham Hotspur. I was thinking it was A&M just due to the similar money situation and lack of recent success, despite having all the talent and tools to be successful. So someone, I mean, it actually was an LSU fan, Chocolate Bubbles. He goes, I would have also voted for Texas A&M and their lack of championships. Their alumni donate to the school like it's tithing, and their endowment's about $12 billion. But they have beaten, LSU two in two of the last three revenue spots this year. So I will abstain. So Texas A&M, they're interesting. I think they're the one that I'd be curious to see how they work out. But LSU, I mean, it's hard not to see them as a chance. But all of that said, the East still has Georgia, and it's other than Alabama in the West. I think it's going to be a hard fight. I think Alabama. I mean, but okay, to be fair, Alabama's Alabama. They are Nick Saban. Doubting Nick Saban is one of the most foolish things anyone can do. So ultimately, I think if the West climbs back up over the East, it's going to be Alabama returning to or perhaps just taking advantage of a misstep by Georgia right now. Dak, I know you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, yes. The West is really, really interesting this year, and I think a lot of people are a little bit underrating Ole Miss in the fact that Quashon Judkins, one of the most productive backs in the SEC, was a true freshman last year. That kid is going to be an absolute monster in the SEC West. Texas A&M, I think the biggest problem with the Texas A&M that recruiting class, it's not a character issue. It's not a lot of it is a character issue, but the main overarching thing I don't think is a character issue. I think it's, you've got true freshmen, and now even this year, coming year, you've got redshirt freshmen / true sophomores that are playing against kids with a COVID year, a lot bigger, a lot stronger. That really shows on the lines, and I think the line play for Texas A&M was not fantastic. I think that this probably will not be the a breakout year for Jimbo's class. Probably looking at the following year is when Texas A&M will probably be a pretty large problem in the West.
One game I'm looking forward to with Texas A&M is that return matchup at Miami, because last year, obviously, everyone thought that was going to be a huge game. And then, of course, those two teams really ended up being totally different than anyone expected preseason. But that is going to be a weird benchmark game between those two programs, see where they are at right now. A couple of things I wanted to mention, just only before we're not going to run out of time. Again, if you'd like to add to the conversation, please hit request. We'll talk about whatever you'd like in college football. But I just wanted to pour out the maple syrup for Canada's one and only NCAA football team. Simon Fraser, they're the Red Leafs. They were originally the Clan, and they changed that because they found out it affected recruiting. But it was like a Scottish clan with a C, but because Simon Fraser was a Scotsman. But so they announced today that they're ending the program. They're kind of a funny story. They were, because Canada has college football. They play Canadian rules. It's university football, but they never wanted to be a Canadian football rules program. They were playing in the NAIA, kind of, those smaller schools, mostly in the Midwest, which actually was their problem. They were way out in Canada. And a lot of the the NAIA programs out on the West joined the NCAA. So what kind of had happened is their conference, the GNAC had eroded. Eastern Washington dropped football. A couple of other programs were kind of meandering about. The GNAC decided to merge those remaining teams into the Lone Star Conference, which, as you can guess, is centered in Texas. And the Lone Star Conference announced that Sol Ross is moving into D2 and was going to join their conference. And therefore, they did not need Simon Fraser. So they told Simon Fraser earlier this year, you're not going to be in our conference. Simon Fraser, which is roughly in Vancouver, they're just outside of Vancouver, Canada. They really didn't have any teams to really play near them anymore. So the costs of a D2 program maintaining themselves across the border just became too much to carry. So they announced today that they're not suspending. They announced they're straight up ending the program. Coincidentally, that created scheduled one of the headlines out of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, one of the Bibles out there of college football in the great state of Texas. They had a headline immediately that the Lone Star Conference schedule is now in disarray after Simon Fraser discontinues football. I thought it was funny only because the Lone Star Conference are literally the people that stuck the dagger in Simon Fraser. So the Red Leafs send their regards to those athletic directors in the Lone Star that didn't let them join in. One last thing I'm going to say about Simon Fraser, because I'm sure you all care about this particular program, but they had one of the funnest bowl games and bowl games rivalry games out there, and it was called the Shrum Bowl. It was named after a former coach. So Vancouver is about to have had two college football programs. They had Simon Fraser in the suburb of Vancouver. They played NCAA and before that NAIA football with a brief time they were playing in the Canadian football version of college football. And then they have the University of British Columbia, which is a massive state school. It's a fine university. It's like, the West Coast big public university in Canada. UBC, they're the Thunderbirds. They play Canadian college football. So for their rivalry, and they restored it this past year after like a 10-year break, they would alternate which rules they played with. So if it was played at Simon Fraser, they played Canadian rules. If it was played at University of British Columbia, they would play the Canadian rules, which is one of the wackiest rivalries ever. That's just playing for the fun of the sport. So they played this year. They were after the 12-year hiatus, and University of British Columbia won by 1 point. So it was a hell of a game with teams that playing rules just for that game. And that was the last game, as it turns out, for Simon Fraser. The program is shut down, and we'll wish them, all those players well. Actually, we had someone even message us in our DMs. Those are the ones that kind of break your heart. It was a father saying, my son just committed to the team like last month, and that's got to stink. That's really got to stink. I hope that young man finds himself a new program. One other thing I wanted to mention, one of the funnier things in the April 1st April Fools, I think the winner of college football April Fools was UConn, because if you haven't seen the tweet, the tweet is simple. You asked, we delivered, and they delivered mock-up uniforms using the famous sad husky, or the depressed husky, or if you've never seen it, just look it up. The sad husky for UConn. And of course they won the national championship in hoops. Some of you may have followed that in basketball, but I mean, this has just been a winning week for UConn sports, winning the NCAA Final Four and having just the runaway hit of college football's April Fools. That logo, if you've ever seen it, it was used for 1 year, unsurprisingly, 1959. Our friends over at Home Field Apparel have even made a shirt of it if you want one. And Home Field does good shirts. They also have an RCFB shirt if you're interested. But I do say that is one of my favorite pieces of swag. We've got a couple of minutes as we're wrapping up. I just wanted to mention a couple of other interesting stories that came across this today. The Pac-12, and this is Dennis Dodd, so, legitimate source here. There's been a couple of really spurious ones talking about the future of the Pac-12 and the Big 12. But the Pac-12 is unlikely to reach a media rights deal with more than half the games airing on TV. And when they say that, they mean linear networks. They mean like on an ESPN or an ABC or somewhere where you get it on television. So 50%, that's a real big problem, as you can imagine, because the big struggle for this new Pac-12 media deal may make or break that conference. If it isn't good, it is possible, if it does not quite reach the dollar amounts that are close to keep them in and keep them competitive with the Big 12, we might see that move for the Big 12 poaching either the four corner states, the border states, aka the Arizona schools, Colorado, and Utah, or who knows? I mean, there's been some wild, and I say wild rumors because they're not sourced very well, that, what if the Big 12 ends up grabbing San Diego State? One of the other fascinating programs in all of this, there was a great article earlier this week about how Fresno, the city of Fresno, is going all out in trying to get the Big 12 to give them some consideration as a member. I think they may not bring quite as much to the table as anything else other than a second California program if they were really tempted to come out west. But they do offer. They're going all out. They're the mayor, the city council. They're trying to get some new tax package passed to be able to redo Bulldog Stadium. I know it has a different name now, but the Fresno State Stadium out there, they have a wildly passionate fan base. Anyone who's dealt with Fresno State knows exactly how passionate they are, because the Central Valley is one of those highly populated areas that people don't quite realize is out there. It's a very different part of California. I know that because I grew up out there. But yeah, all that said, and one last thing, Middle Tennessee State, they made their bowl rings for the Hawaii Bowl, but people have noticed the side of the ring actually has the score for their victory over Miami in that big upset they had early in the season. So that's another kind of fun little bit I wanted to throw out there. It's been about 30 minutes. That's as long as we like to do our off-season, our CFB talks. I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. I just want to thank you all for listening and participating. My name's Bobak Hayeri. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And now I'm going to hang up and listen.